One would think certain things would be indefensible, and yet, in this essay, I don't want to come off as judgmental towards anyone who respects the artist Travis Scott's work or has been impacted by his music and positive actions in the past.
You saved my life.
The focus of this video will be on examining the questionable actions of Travis Scott during Astroworld, with a focus on talking about why many fans of his on the internet seek to defend these actions, even though that seems like a pretty bad thing to do. A lot of people see stans of artists jump people online and tweet brash, often illogical defenses of these artists and think to themselves, this must be pathological behavior. Surely there's some fancy name from behavioral psychology that can be stamped on these people to showcase just how uniquely, unequivocally bad they are at being rational and normal. But the reality is that these folks who defend celebrities online for immoral actions are just like you and me. They could be your classmate who you have friendly small talk with. They could be working at your boba shop. And most of the time, they're probably completely down-to-earth, chill people. And this is the scary part. I think many people are drawn to this overzealousness because of their socio-political realities, in an effort to defend the positive things they found in their lives and their identities through parasocial dynamics and online community dynamics. And I think our fear of the witch hunt, our lack of faith in institutions to hold people accountable, and our further flocking into unregulated, globalized social media spaces that can often confirm our worldviews and help us find ourselves, make it so that criticism can feel dangerous to us, even when it really isn't. I'm Elliot. Today, let's talk about what creates the rabid Travis Scott defender. We're not going to get anywhere and nobody's mind will be changed, but I want to see if the YouTube algorithm will reward this video, and I feel like hearing myself talk. So, this is a project that makes me very excited. Let's get started. Part 1. Context. Let's start by contextualizing. Travis Scott, born Jacques Webster, is a Houston rapper and producer worth around $50 million. He's not only become greatly rich and popular through hit records like Sicko Mode and Pick Up the Phone, but he's also built something of a brand empire with successful merch releases, collaborations with Fortnite, etc. One of his biggest ventures is the popular annual Astroworld Festival, wherein the tragedy from this past week took place. Launched in 2018 in congruence with his Astroworld album, Astroworld Festival has been a coveted ticket for fans of Travis and his style of hip-hop, seeing an increase in concert goers each year. This is helped by Travis's reputation as a dynamic performer, as he's known for high-energy, high-budget shows. But such a reputation has not come without controversy, both on and off the stage. In the past, Scott has received criticism for using homophobic slurs on stage and has been proven to have incited violence at concerts before. Twice before, Mr. Scott has been arrested and accused of inciting riots at his concerts, pleading guilty to minor charges. In an ongoing civil case, one concert-goer said he was partially paralyzed in 2017 after Mr. Scott encouraged people to jump from a third-floor balcony and then had him hoisted on stage. At the Lollapalooza festival that summer in Chicago, the rapper's set was cut off 5 minutes in, after he told fans to rush the barricades, flip off security, and chant, "We want rage," resulting in a stampede that injured a 15-year-old girl. Mr. Scott later pleaded guilty to reckless conduct and was put under court supervision for a year. In 2017, Mr. Scott was arrested again following a performance in Arkansas, where he was charged with inciting a riot for encouraging fans to rush the stage and bypass security. He eventually pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor for disorderly conduct and paid a $7,000 fine. These incidents seem to indicate patterns of recklessness towards fans and a creation of safety hazards, among other things. But these incidents have not seemed to deter Travis's attitudes, and his inability to recognize his mistakes and improve his approach as a public figure and a performer seem to have led to negligence towards a festival tragedy that has claimed the lives of 8 people and injured over 100.
And then there's also the question of what was Travis Scott's level of awareness during all of this? Because since all of this has come out, he has publicly said he was not aware all of this was going down. This has also been the line of defense for many of his fans too. But clearly, if we look back at the video, there's no real curiosity on his part to understand the gravity of what's happening around him. And with this being his festival, he does have at least some level of obligation to want to know that, to be involved in understanding that. So yes, while for one moment Travis may have stopped to observe that someone in the crowd was not in a great way, all of these things coming together didn't really raise the massive red flag for Travis that it should have. Travis and the greater festival personnel as well. Why is somebody who is more in the know not telling him what's going on? Why isn't it dawning on Travis that maybe the concert needs to stop at least for a little bit? What if whoever person is driving that security vehicle into the crowd is driving it for an emergency reason? What if they need the crowd to move? If that's the case, it may be dangerous to continue playing music at this point, which is evidenced by this video of people dancing on the security cart as Travis is performing. The Houston Chronicle said Travis Scott continued performing for 37 minutes after the festival had already been declared a mass casualty event, which is significant because when you're talking about being crushed, being trampled, cardiac arrest, not being able to breathe, like seconds are life and death. And while I'm sure most of the staff who was on the ground did their best to deal with this situation, there have been accounts of a general lack of preparedness for a situation such as this on their part. One concert goer, who I guess is also an ICU nurse, describes passing out at the festival, then when coming to, not being treated and having to get up and help treat others because there were people on staff who didn't know how to take a pulse or were giving CPR to people who had a pulse. Undoubtedly, these lawsuits, many more will be rolling out very soon, are going to be taking into account Travis Scott's past behavior to make him look even more liable for all of this. There's also that fan from a 2017 Travis Scott concert who was paralyzed, and he says that he feels Travis has learned nothing, which is why many of these suits are probably going to go right to a settlement. This still could go in any direction, though, as Travis has not yet publicly acknowledged any real responsibility for any of this, most likely for legal reasons, of course. The responses so far have been pretty cut and dry or even formulaic, like this one from Astroworld Fest, which is very much a thoughts and prayers kind of thing and talking about working with officials. Travis Scott himself on Twitter put up your standard black and white Notes app post. But what's even more confusing is like this Instagram story video that Travis posted as well. Look, guys, I don't want to make fun of this video. I will not make fun of this video because this is a really serious goddamn situation. People are dead. But this update is ridiculous. This video doesn't relay any info that we don't have already or that we need. It's just a very bad attempt at looking distraught. Travis at this point may be fighting a losing battle in terms of controlling the narrative around all of this. So maybe let's switch gears quickly and talk about what should have happened instead. What should have happened is the festival should have been stopped or at least put on pause until we could all collectively, especially those running the festival and Travis, figure out what was going on and just allow clearance and safety and passage for those working to do their work so that they could save more lives. Also, just to prevent more people from getting hurt too. At the very least, what Travis should have done is just set a better tone among his fans for this event. Look, I know at concerts, crowds can get crazy, crowds can get rowdy. There's going to be some people there who are maybe on drugs or drunk. I've been to my share of metal and punk shows where things go nuts. But usually in those crowds, there tends to be a code of if someone falls down, pick them up. And on top of it, when you're talking about a festival that has as many people at it as Astroworld did, the risk factors for things like moshing and crowd surging increase exponentially. The value of the lives of the people at the festival should have taken priority of the festival just continuing on as normal.
I care about you guys' safety first.
It's safe to say Travis Scott, though not as responsible on a grand scale for the disaster as the organizers of the event in Live Nation and the Houston Police Department, still deserves great criticism for his handling of the situation both while and after it occurred. But it's also safe to guess, with any controversy surrounding a popular figure in 2021, that there will be droves of people making all manner of defenses for the person under fire. This is not to say that any and all criticism of Travis Scott in this situation is well put, and that there aren't also people making unfair accusations, spreading misinformation, and even being flat out racist towards Travis and other hip-hop artists in the wake of this event. But many of the defenses of Travis eventually discard nuance in favor of portraying him as a more heroic or at least relatable figure. One tweet says, "Don't blame the performer, but rather the crew around him telling him to keep going." Or maybe blame both, since they're both theoretically negligent in this situation. Another tweet says, "Okay, but putting him to blame for those 8 dead, it never happened before. Think human and do not think Twitter. He will feel bad and he cares a lot. And yeah, I am a fan. That's why I know what I'm talking about. If he knew how serious it was, he would have stopped. But people pass out all the time at concerts, and especially by him, he is known for crazy rage concerts. This time it was..." Unsafe incidents have literally happened at Travis's concerts before, and he's ignored these issues, as have fans like these, or else they wouldn't be reacting if such a thing is entirely out of the blue. Perhaps the most notable thing to be taken from this, though, is the fans' reverence towards not only the artist and ignoring his negligence, but also towards a relationship they hold with Travis. They choose to justify their point of view by noting that they're a fan, and that's why they know what they're talking about. Then they psychoanalyze Travis, presuming his intentions and state of mind in a favorable way that can be quite easily rebutted. All this is done despite this person likely never having met Travis and likely having no personal relationship with him. In today's day and age, we know this to be an example of a parasocial relationship. Tons of videos and articles are published decrying parasocial relationships, usually ones held by stans, and how they encompass obsessive, irrational, even pathological behavior. The term parasocial relationship is usually coupled with dystopian imagery and some type of anti-modernist, even anti-capitalist sentiment, warning people of how folks are being controlled by the media through technology and by companies as tightly controlled celebrity personas. In my view, we understand parasocial relationships entirely wrong. Horton and Wohl begin their foundational 1956 paper on parasocial relationships by arguing radio, television, and the movies give the illusion of face-to-face relationship with the performer. The word illusion seems to come up often in these academic texts on parasociality. Hartman and Goldhorn's revisitation of Horton and Wohl mentions users' friendships towards media performers and users' illusionary experience of being engaged in real social interaction. But these phrases and terms are, in my view, completely inaccurate with regards to how your average media consumer views their relationships with the public figures they take interest in. Fans of a public figure, by and large, are not under an illusion that they're actually friends or having a real social interaction with them. Someone in an artist's fandom outwardly stating that they are friends with an artist would be shunned as delusional and potentially a stalker. My thing is, fans are aware that they are fans. Looking back at that latter tweet, which exhibits much of the problematic behavior we've come to associate with stans and parasocial relationships, we're made very clear as to what this Travis Scott fan considers themselves. They outright say, "I am a fan. That's why I know what I'm talking about." Many will respond by saying this illusion of friendship is more intrinsic than anything. Sure, people don't say they're friends with the artist, but they kind of believe they are, even if they're not conscious of it. This brings up conversations of what friendship and what real social interactions truly are and what they encompass. Does feeling you have intimate knowledge of someone's personality and way of thinking mean you're assuming you have a friendship with them? If so, does this mean that biographers who write in-depth histories and analyses of historical figures are under an illusion of friendship with their subjects? Does Lin-Manuel Miranda think Alexander Hamilton is his bestie? I could rant at length about my issues and questions with the scholarship surrounding parasocial relationships, but that's for another day. My point is that we can't simply interpret fans as being obsessed with Travis Scott and believing themselves to be friends of his, even in extreme cases like the ones shown. These fans consider themselves fans, and that is its own unique status, with its own unique relationship to the subject of fandom. So why do self-proclaimed fans act this way? Let's hold that thought for a second. Let's look at this Teen Vogue article, which attempts to investigate why young people are so drawn to fandoms. Feeling as though you are part of a tribe is not always easy, but finding groups of people with whom you share common interests is a starting point. It's not surprising that so many people are drawn to fandoms for that reason alone. It creates a common ground in an otherwise divisive and disconnected world. What is true of fandoms is nothing that psychologists haven't known for years. This is simply the modern iteration of a very primal instinct. Dr. Laurel Steinberg, a psychotherapist and professor of psychology at Columbia University, told Teen Vogue, Belonging to a fandom group helps adolescents connect to other like-minded youths on social media throughout the year, as well as at concert events. Feeling like you're part of a group can help one define his or her identity and give a sense of purpose to what might be an otherwise routine lifestyle. She went on to say, connecting with people over shared passions and interests is good for mental and emotional health because it helps to create a fraternity-like or family-like sense of security. It's also generally fun to scheme and get excited about something with others and gives them a subject to talk about that they know will always be well received. I'll add that while this is very much true of young people who experience great amounts of alienation due to high school dynamics, family traumas, and general early life struggles, it's also true of people regardless of age. Finding a sense of belonging and community is a significant part of how we ascribe meaning in our lives and feel whole. And in a time period wherein political and social alienation are more common and even appealing than ever, thanks to the internet and late-stage capitalism, it's no surprise that more and more people are taking interest in fulfilling this part of themselves. But when something becomes so deeply part of your identity, how willing are you to observe it critically, especially when healthy examples of that are so hard to find and so rarely exalted? Division across social and political lines often causes the different opposing groups created to feel especially protective over their spaces and especially hostile towards those who may disrupt or betray these groups. And our awakening to political realities, from declines in mental health exacerbated by bullying to bigotry against marginalized groups, makes us incredibly sensitive to those who stand on another side of what we think is correct philosophically. This is all to say that your average Travis Scott fan, like your average K-pop stan or Minecraft content creator stan, is more emotionally connected to their fandom and more hostile towards outsiders than ever. And this creates a great amount of motivation for a person to show sympathy and allegiance with their subject of fandom, even when this is ill-advised. Combine this with folks' desires for instant gratification and confirmation that comes in part as a reaction to stresses associated with oversaturation with information in media, and you have cause for alarm. Part 3. Conclusion. Accountability is a dream. I've never believed cancel culture to be a real thing in the sense that it hardly ever achieves its goal of changing a person's material reality, particularly when a person has enough money and connections to just pay for PR and bury themselves in niceties. But the reason it's become such a subject of debate and ire to me is because people fear the witch hunt, especially in the West. 300 years and 50,000 executions of people deemed to be involved in witchery has left quite a scar on the American conscience, even 3 centuries later. People still perform the crucible, even though it's pretty boring and old. It's a story that compels us because it teaches us that greater powers are not to be trusted, and that tomorrow, if the people around us decide it, we can be thrust away from everything we know, punished forever, and even killed. And so when someone like Travis Scott is given enormous criticism, even if it seems pretty fair, those sympathetic with Travis in any way will feel compelled to fight against this potential outcome. Folks feel a strong desire to protect celebrities and others from cancel culture, out of a fear of emboldening the modern-day witch hunt. The problem is there should be a thick line between wanting to destroy a person's life while branding them an evil doer and wanting to hold a person accountable for doing bad stuff. In Marxist discourse, the term critical support has become popularized to describe a general position of supporting a government or group of political actors despite having significant criticisms of them in order to defend the subject from unfair and or potentially disastrous consequences. I think this idea can generally be ported to fandom and should be considered strongly by those who participate in fandoms, but maybe more in this case to the inverse. Rather than feel a strong need to show support for a public figure you're a fan of in all instances, even if you have criticisms of them, it's important to know when to take a step back, evaluate your own position, and avoid making irrational decisions in terms of how you defend them. Parasocial relationships are ultimately relationships. When you're friends with someone, you don't always agree with what they do. At points, you'll even have to consider criticizing their actions to their face, telling them what they've done wrong, and even seriously consider severing the friendship if the situation remains dire. That's what being a good friend is all about. You hold your friend accountable when they do something wrong. You take time to consider your own position and what would be the best course of action during controversies with them. You avoid being unhealthy towards them, but you also state your limits. Ironically, I think people generally have a better understanding of this when it comes to friendships than when it comes to fandom, perhaps because fandom holds so many stakes. The consequences of telling your friend they messed up are often way less severe than publicly stating your fandom's subject is in the wrong, especially when opinions are divided. This is just another indication that considering parasocial relationships an illusion of friendship is far-fetched. I would even say it's patronizing. Fandom is its own complex relationship that often has less to do with a relationship with the subject than it does a relationship with the fandom and a view of one's own identity. Fandom can be an incredibly positive thing. An r/Travis Scott post from January called How Travis Scott Saved My Life reveals how a person dealt with depression and grew through their struggles thanks to Travis Scott's music. Countless examples exist of this. These are not the accounts of stalkers or of people manipulated by persona and thrown into mental health disarray. These are the kinds of things most people can relate to because it's very common to build bonds with musicians, filmmakers, authors that have changed your life through their work, through their aesthetics, and yes, even through their public actions. But fandom cannot be uncritical. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Your identity does not have to be destroyed when someone you support lets you down. You don't have to feel a person is going to be destroyed when they're being criticized. And you don't even have to stop loving that person's positive aspects to recognize and criticize their negative ones. Travis Scott is a human being who has messed up majorly and needs to be held accountable. The exact details of that accountability can be litigated by those prepared to do so responsibly, but the reality is that this won't really happen. He'll take some hits, but his material status will probably not drop off the face of the earth. He can rehabilitate his image and figure out a new way to launch his career into the stratosphere. How he can even genuinely change as a person if he so chooses. But he doesn't have to. And part of the reason he doesn't is because of a lack of critical fandom. Then again, it could never be so simple. Critical support has become a term many leftists use to sweep governments' human rights abuses under the rug, and concerned fans often designate themselves in such a way to get away with saying all types of unfounded negative things. In the meantime, all we can do is keep trying to think critically and look out for one another. Thanks. Check out the link to our Patreon in the description. For $2 a month, you can help support us make these videos. Additionally, you can also join a Discord server we have where we can have like little events. I'll play music, we chat, etc., etc. Thanks to Denai, part of the team, for editing this video as usual. And check out our streams. We do them on this YouTube channel. They're pretty cool. We also have a Twitch. The Twitch is Baby Gang Live, so you can check that out too for other streams. Oh, and I have a EP. I make music. I have an EP on December 9th that's coming out. So I don't know if you care about that kind of thing. Check it out. All right, bye.